the English translation of Pujyashree's Samadhi Dasha, Pujyashree's state of equanimous meditation. Today's topic is the Samadhi Dasha of Param Pujyashree Gurudev, elucidating that his meditation was the maximal limit that is possible in this current time. Param Pujyashree Gurudev had given a letter to be copied about 25 years ago. I was searching that letter for a long time. By chance, the letter was found today. Param Pujyashree Gurudev describes his Samadhi Dasha in his own words. In the letter, as indescribable, wonderful, incomparable with realization, shocked with experience. We shall read the letter in verbatim here. Again, it is time of read the letter in verbatim here. Again, it is time of the Paryushan Mahaparva, and Param Pujyashree had this amazing Samadhi Dasha during the days of Paryushan Parva in 1998. The mumukshus who were fortunate to be present at the time will have their beatific experience refreshed by the words of this letter. The words of the letters are as follows. Samadhi Dasha. This is the heading Param Pujyashree Gurudev has given. On the day of 23rd August in the hall of Vidya Bhakti Anandam, around 250 brothers and sisters were performing devotional worship for Paryushan with Bhakti Parayan. It was scheduled in the afternoon between 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Prabhu Darshan means vision of the Lord. Paramatmani Stuti means praise of the Supreme Soul, and the description of the characteristics of a true devotee was ongoing. Pujyashree was seated at the back of the hall and overjoyed with devotion. Twice he briefly described the true feelings of a devotee with adoration. Then the speech stopped. He was already seated in Padmasana, means in lotus posture, and as Adarniya Sri Manibai continued the subject of meditation in his Swadhyay, his consciousness began to become more antarmukh, means introverted. Everyone was seated waiting for rice and ukalo, means spiced milk tea. He was seated motionless like an idol until 6:30 p.m., remaining still in a state of samadhi, meditative trance. He slowly came out of samadhi meditation and did Prabhu Darshan. He only consumed about a cup of soup with his cupped hands in the Sant Kutir. Such meditative states were noted 3 to 4 times a year with increasing, decreasing intensities. The practice of meditation and study were already accumulated as sanskar, imprints, and were natural to the child Mukund. Now, Param Pujyashree Gurudev describes his state of meditation. First of all, the chanting of Namaskar Mahamantra went on the subtly, and the idols of Param Gurus, means Supreme Lords, started arising one by one in his Smruti Pat, means memory plane. And although these idols were arising, They seemed to be on the upper rotating level of the floor millstone means Kanti. I am just motionless like the bottom level of the millstone. I am untouched by the changes taking place in the upper level. In this way, bhavana means feelings started to become stable. From such bhavana, the chitta vritti means the consciousness became sharir anupreksha means contemplation of the body, where all the body parts felt different from me. The effort was in trying to say in the bhava means feeling that I am an independent knower in this contemplative thought process. Here the contemplation continued on the meaning of Samaisar Kalash 181 and 185, and after this the contemplation continued on the word Shuddha means pure. Chinmaya Ekameva, I am only one supreme consciousness. Then the Chitta Vritti means the consciousness became still, and Anandasha, the state of the bliss, emerged. After this, some stillness, alternating with few moments of the subtle self contemplation, continued. The body felt lifeless. The meditative state continued in this manner. With this, Pujyashree concluded the letter here. Here we will think a little more on the subject of the letter, which is then the consciousness became still. Then the consciousness became still means that the buddhi purvakna vikalpo, determined mental thought process stopped and the state of bliss emerged means atindriya anand, super sensuous bliss was experienced. Pujyashree's experience elucidates that such super sensuous experience can only last 15 to 20 seconds at the most in current times. After this, there is some stillness. That is, at this moment, the body feels lifeless for the Gnani Dharmatma, means enlightened person. This is because whether one calls it vritti, means attentiveness, or upyog, means awareness, it is diverted from the body towards the soul. When Pujyashree Gurudev came out of the state of meditation, his bodily actions have been perceived to be somewhat different. His actions seemed independent of the senses. His eyes appeared to want to remain closed, and there was very slow movement of the feet with a downward gaze, as though observing non-violence. If such meditation happened during morning bhakti, then some mumukshus will wait silently for him in the hall, and when Pujyashree left the hall, the mumukshus would follow after him silently in reverence. Upon reaching his place, he would not even raise his hands for blessing, and again his eyes would be closed. Back in a semi meditational state, in such instances, the devotional program would be postponed sometimes, and even if the devotional program did continue, there would be an atmosphere of quiet peace with elevated feelings. For the Uttam Mumukshus, means the best aspirants, these were rewarding moments. However, on this particular day of Paryushan Parva, in this instance, the stillness of meditation was very prolonged. Even when Pujyashree came out of the Samadhi, he was still in a meditative state for such a long period that although he had soup in his cupped hands, When he attended the night program, he continued in a semi meditative state. He was engrossed in this meditative state. When the whole is filled with particles of such heightened feeling of an enlightened soul, there is purity in the atmosphere. For a true mumukshu, there is an exponential increase in his elevated feelings. An unfortunate person will never witness anything like this, and any memorable events we have up to now. It is Pujyashree's meditation. We will now do an analysis of this through the Rahasya Purna Chitti, esoteric letter of Sri Acharya Kalp Todarmalji. It is stated that Nirvikalp, indeterminate thoughts, can be attained only through Savikalp, means determinate thinking. When self-realized person efforts for the process of meditation on the nature of the self, he meditates on the Bhed Vignan, means differential knowledge of the self and non-self. After knowing the miracle of consciousness only that is devoid of the no karma, kosi karma, bhav karma, emotional dispositions, and which is the nature of the self, then one is freed from the thoughts of what is not self. Did not Param Pujyashree contemplate on the body first, or through thought's process contemplate that I am the knower and the separate from it? Now Acharya Kalp Sri Todarmalji says that only the thought that I am the soul remains, and here there are several types of mindness of own nature. What are the types? I am Chidanand, super sensuous bliss, I am Siddha, emancipated, etc. There are waves of spontaneous bliss emanating from these thoughts. There is a thrill or excitement in the parinam, means resulting disposition, and thereafter such thoughts disappear, leaving only the feelings of own pure consciousness. Then all resulting disposition that prevail are focused on the nature of the self. Thought processes on the perception, knowledge, etc., or Naya means viewpoint, Praman means valid knowledge, all subside. This means that is only through determinate thinking that nature of the self is validated. It is in the current mode that ever pervading means vyapya vyapak exists, where the condition of dhyata means meditator, dhyay means the object of meditation are removed. Such a state is called nirvikalp experience. Thereafter, Mr. Todarmalji has narrated a verse from Naichakra, the meaning of which is at the time of experiencing this essence that is conjoining with the pure soul. It is firstly known through viewpoint, valid knowledge. Then, during devotion, which is the time of experience, there is no viewpoint or valid knowledge because it is direct experience. Let us compare the above words with the meditation of Param Pujyashree Gurudev. Param Pujyashree Gurudev used different aids for meditation, such as chanting of Namaskar Mahamantra, having the presence of images of the Supreme Gurus in the conscious plane, and thereafter contemplation on the body. Thus, In this manner, he got knowledge of the soul through different viewpoints. After this, like the example After this, like the example given of millstone layer, the upper layer keeps rotating, which is likened to the savikalp state, and like the lower layer, his insight means drashti became progressively still, by which soul was experienced. A person prior to self realization, when he is samyak sanmukh means facing towards it, when for the first time he achieves self realization, at that time, as a rule, from being in the state of savikalp, one abandons all dependence on auspicious feelings to attain realization of Svatma Tattva means own soul substance. And even the Gnani Dharmatma, when faced with strong auspicious emotions, reduces them gradually and becomes absolutely still by focusing on the soul, like the lower plane of the millstone, and enjoys the supersensuous bliss. Here, Param Pujyashree Gurudev continued contemplating on the words Chinmaya Ekameva, I am only one supreme consciousness, with Shubhabhav means auspicious feeling, and left these two at the end. Then the momentary state of pure supersensual bliss appeared. When there is Ramanata means engrossment in the Shuddha Paryay, pure momentary state of Atmadravya means soul substance, when the Shuddha Bhav means pure feelings are manifested. For this, Param Pujyashree writes that the Chitta Vritti means mind became stable and the state of bliss appeared. Acharya Kalp gives the example of a gem in his Rahasya Purna Chitti, esoteric letter. We will understand this from the example of necklace, that at the time of purchasing it we think about various aspects such as its luster, its design, its shape, its price. But when women wear it, there are no such thoughts. Only joy of wearing it is experienced. In exactly the same way, a person experiences the state of nirvikalp through savikalp meditation, the knowledge that was through the five senses and the mind is now wrapped up from all sides into this nirvikalp experience of being Swarup Sanmukh means facing directly towards own nature. When even the mind becomes vilay means diffused, here too, as the knowledge is in the form of kshayopsham means destruction cum subsidence of karma. It can only know one substance at any one time. This form of knowledge, while it is knowing the nature of the self, is somewhat stopped from knowing other things. In such a situation, in spite of lot of external noise, the meditator who is meditating on the self will not be aware of it. In this way, even mati gyan means sensory knowledge is Swarup Sanmukh means turned towards nature of self. This kind of description is also found in Atmakhyati and Swarup Avlokan, etc. That is why we call Nirvikalp experience. Atindriya means supersensuous, because the dharma means the nature of the senses is only touch, taste, smell, color, and these are not found here. And the nature of the mind is to have thoughts, but that too is not present. This is what Sri Todarmalji says. The knowledge that was prevailing in the mind and the senses, now the same knowledge is prevailing in experiencing without relying on the senses, and therefore we call it Atindriya. Hence, Acharya Kalp has now established that Anubhav means experience is supersensuous knowledge. It is not the subject of senses or mind, or at that moment, knowledge is not dependent on the senses and the mind, but it is purely self reliant. Now, from a different perspective, Acharya Kalp explained that it can be said that self experience happens through the mind because during the experience, Mati Shrut, sensory cognitive knowledge, is present without any other knowledge. Until a person attains Keval Gyan, means omniscient knowledge, it is dependent on sensory cognitive knowledge, which is fragmented knowledge, and some Jnani Dharmatma can have charitra means conduct without one type of kshay means passion. Some may have conduct without two types of passions, and some Yogeshwar means supreme masters who are apramat means practice with attentiveness are without three types of passions. So, one who is fourth gunasthanakvarti means at fourth spiritual stage has sadbhav means presence of three types of passions. At the fifth spiritual stage there is presence of two types of passions, and a person at the sixth spiritual stage has presence of one type of passion. The level of conduct, depending on the number of types of the passions present, will reflect on the subconscious thoughts, abuddhi purvakna vicharo, present during self experience. This is not something which is intelligible even to the Jnani Dharmatma, knowledgeable persons. Further, Acharya Kalp proclaims that sensory cognitive knowledge is not independent of the senses and the mind, but during experience there is definitely abhav means absence of the senses, because the subject of the senses is murtik padarth, tangible objects, but the subject of the mind amurtik padarth means non-tangible objects. Therefore, here the consequential mental activities are focused on the thoughts relating to the nature of the self, thus preventing it from other thoughts. Hence, we say it is achieved through the mind. Was not the mind present in the Savikalp state? We are able to discuss the mind when the Jnani Dharmatma are able to catch their own thoughts, and when they experienced supersensuous bliss, the mind has become diffused. However, is not the mind the knower of the experience? When a mother's love is overflowing for her child, then this feeling is known by the mind. In the same way, the feeling of the experience is known by the mind. The mind knows exactly what the taste of the soul feels like. The mind is Sakshi, means witness to before and after the supersensuous bliss, because the mind can also know non-tangible substances like the soul. Therefore, it is said that ekagra chinta nirodho dhyanam means focused without wavering thoughts is meditation, is the characteristic of the meditation in the experiential state. Without the mind, other dispositions cannot exist in own nature. Hence, Swanubhav means self-realization is said to be manjanit, means born out of the mind. Therefore, there is no contraindication in calling it Atindriya or Manjanit. The difference lies only in the manner of speech. One meaning of born out of the mind can also be interpreted as that when Pujyashree took last resort on the jap, means repeatedly reciting of Shuddha Chinmaya Ekameva, means I am only one supreme consciousness. Other senses became inactive, still in the savikalp state, and the soul was experienced through the mind. This is how he attained the nirvikalp state and could be said that it was manjanit. Finally, to sum it up, point number 1. At the time of supersensuous bliss, sensory cognitive knowledge is present, and therefore one could say that it is born out of the mind. But the Jnani Dharmatma is only experiencing the bliss at this moment, just enjoying the happiness. Point number 2. The conduct is proportional to the absence of the passions, and therefore that much bliss is experienced. Point number 3. The knowledge of experience during supersensuous bliss, which is acknowledged, is known in the mind. Point number 4. When the functioning of the five senses and the mind stops in the knowledge of the enlightened person, that is when the supersensuous bliss is felt. This ends here. Om. If any mistakes are done, please forgive me. કોઈ પણ પ્રકારની ભૂલ થઈ હોય તો પ્રભુ અને ગુરુની સાક્ષીએ તસ્મિચ્છામિ દુક્કડમ.